Now, 4 years ago, I wrote a piece about an Australian Muslim cleric who was calling for the beheading of somebody. And I wrote, the headline is Australian Muslim cleric calls for beheading, who cares? And in the article, I talk about a professor who taught econ at University of Illinois. He's not a conservative, calls himself a Keynesian type of economist, which means he's, quote, not afraid of deficit spending, so it's not exactly Reagan-esque. I mention that only because he received a 4-page petition signed by some 900 academics calling for U.S. to abandon our support of Israel, part of the BDS movement, the boycott, divest, sanction movement. So this professor decided that he would send a 4-page letter about the human rights, anti-gay, anti-women practices in the Middle East and see whether or not the same 900 academics would sign that 4-page petition. Not too surprisingly, he said, quote, the results were surprising. Even though I thought the responses would be few, they were almost non-existent. And that brings me to my next guest, William A. Jacobson. He teaches law at Cornell, graduated from Harvard in 1984. I think Harvard is still accredited. And has founded a couple of very popular websites. One is called Legal Insurrection that I enjoy. Another one is called College Insurrection. Both receive over 1 million page views per month, and he's been very active in covering this BDS movement. Please welcome to the show Professor William Jacobson. Professor, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Professor, what's behind this BDS movement? What's going on?
Well, I think what's been going on is that for 100 years, the Arab world has not accepted a national presence of Jews in the Middle East. Started boycotts of Jews in the 1920s. The Arab League boycott started in the 1940s. And now you have something that's called the BDS movement. You're very familiar with it, but a lot of your listeners may not be. That stands for boycott, divest, and sanction.
Mm-hmm.
And what they want to do is they want to completely isolate Israel in every way possible. So your listeners may have heard around the Super Bowl time there was a controversy about SodaStream and Scarlett Johansson. They want to boycott that because one of the faculties is over the old so-called green line in Israel, the pharmacy line. They want to boycott Sabra hummus in dining halls at colleges. And most pernicious to me is they also want an academic boycott. They want to completely cut off Israeli educational institutions from any sort of interaction with the world academic community. And that's a lot of what I've been focusing on.
William Jacobson is my guest, Cornell University law professor. Professor, the reason we know this is so phony is because if they truly are concerned about the alleged abuse of the Palestinians, presumably in the occupied territories, they would be concerned about the abuse of Muslim women in Arab and Muslim states. But these same people seem to be very exercised about Israel's alleged civil rights abuses, but a no-fly zone over what the Muslim and Arab states are doing to women and other people.
You're exactly right. I mean, it's beyond hypocrisy here because there are so many abuses throughout the Arab world that the only thing they want to focus on, though, is Israel. And in the U.S., they won't come right out and say it, but elsewhere they'll come out and say it. This whole boycott movement is aimed at destroying Israel. It's not meant to bring peace. It's not meant to give the Palestinian rights. What it is, it's an anti-Israel movement. It's not a pro-Palestinian movement. And the fact that they would welcome Syria, they would welcome Iran, they would welcome others into their academic conferences, but kick out Israelis is absolutely outrageous. And it just goes to show you that what they're talking about is not principle. They're not talking about any sort of principled stand that they would apply evenly throughout the world. What they're talking about is singling out Israel for a standard that is not applied to anybody else in the world, not even the worst regimes, and using that to try to destroy Israel. Now, if you were to substitute, some other ethnic or racial group for Jews in this equation, you would call it racism. If you apply a standard to one group that does not get applied to other groups. But here they don't like it when it's pointed out that the movement is anti-Semitic. But that's what it is because it singles out one state, the Jewish state, for treatment on standards not applied to anybody else.
My guest is William Jacobson. He teaches law at Cornell University. Mr. Jacobson, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about what they've been doing at UCLA. They've had a couple of votes about boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Israel. I want you to tell us what's been going on here at UCLA. Professor William Jacobson is my guest, 1-800-222-5222. We are Talk Radio 790 KABC with traffic first on the fours when you need it most. 1-800-222-5222 is the number. William Jacobson is my guest, Cornell Law University professor. Professor, at UCLA, they've had, I think, 2 votes now on whether or not UCLA would participate in this boycott, divest, sanction movement. And I think both times it's been turned down. The movement been turned down, but it's been a close vote.
That's right. There was a vote a couple of months ago in which the anti-Israel students sought a resolution that the school should divest from several companies doing business with Israel. Now, of course, it was a charade, because even if the student assembly passed such a resolution, it would not be binding on the school itself. It's more like a propaganda tactic to try to demonize Israel. They lost that vote. The argument went literally all night. I'm on East Coast time. I went to bed figuring it would be done by the time I got up. I woke up at 9 a.m. Eastern, and they were still debating. But at the end of the day, it failed by 2 votes. What the students did is they weren't satisfied with that, so they tried to, in a sense, get a do-over. And the do-over was they then filed complaints against 2 of the students they thought voted on the Israel side, claiming they should have been disqualified for voting because they participated in pro-Israel trips sponsored by pro-Israel groups. And they lost that one also. So there have been 2 attempts, but I'm sure this coming fall there'll be 3rd and 4th and 5th.
Professor, I could understand their argument if this were South Africa, if this were Cuba. We're talking about Israel. What is the egregious thing that these people claim Israel is doing?
Well, there's a difference between what they really believe and what they claim. I think what they really believe is they don't like Jews having a state in the Middle East. What they claim is that Israel is the equivalent of South Africa, which it's not. It's a multiracial state. Even among the Jewish population, it's multiracial. The minorities have the vote there. They have the protection of law. That may not be perfect, but where in the world are minority rights perfectly protected? And so Israel at every level, what it is it's a religious conflict. It's this type of conflict that's going on throughout the world and throughout the Middle East. But again, when Muslims dominate the country and impose Islamic law, they don't call that apartheid. They only call it apartheid, and they only equate it to South Africa when it's Jews who are the majority, and when it's Jewish law, which is not even the state law, but is the predominant prevailing religion in the state. And so, again, it's that double standard of a standard being applied to Israel that's not applied anywhere else in the world. And, of course, another huge difference between Israel and South Africa, not only is it not a racial conflict, it's a majority rule conflict. It's 1 person, 1 vote. And they just don't like the fact that Jews are the majority in Israel. Even if you counted the population in what's Judea and Samaria, what people frequently refer to as the West Bank, it's still a majority Jewish population. So this is not about it being South Africa. Calling it South Africa is just a way to demonize Israel, but it's, again, using standards not applied to anybody else.
Professor, if we're talking about the treatment of Palestinians within the borders of Israel, Palestinians, as you know, serve on the Knesset. There is a Palestinian on the Supreme Court. During apartheid, how many blacks were on the Supreme Court? How many blacks sat in Parliament? I mean, really?
That's right. And you could make a list and go on and on and on that there are, and the Israeli Supreme Court often votes against the government, and often, when challenged by minorities, just like in the United States. I mean, hardly a week goes by in the United States that somebody isn't filing a challenge saying that somebody's rights aren't being protected, and you have an independent judiciary that rules on it. That's what happens in Israel, but that's not what happens in other places in the Middle East.
Professor, real quickly, I consider this movement to be blatantly anti-Semitic. Has President Obama said anything about it? Has Eric Holder said anything about this movement? Have either of these guys, Biden, said anything at all about this movement? I know what Kerry said. Kerry said that if Israel does not make some sort of reconciliation with Israel, you're going to find more of this kind of thing, and Kerry had to walk that back. But that's the only statement that I know of that any administration ever made about this movement. Has Obama said anything?
Not that I'm aware of. I think from, Eric Holder, who's always looking for some sort of civil rights violation or some sort of discrimination, as far as I know, and maybe I'm wrong on it, but as far as I know, it's been stone cold silence.
Wow. William Jacobson's been my guest. Cornell University, the website, legalinsurrection.com or collegeinsurrection.com, either one. 1 million hits. William Jacobson, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.